Back to the Ashworth by the Sea and Hampton Beach. It's politics in progress. By the way, if you haven't been to the Ashworth in a while, take a trip down to Hampton Beach. The food is great. There's entertainment on Friday and Saturday nights. The Ashworth is as good as ever. Check it out right here in Hampton Beach. All right, 3 prominent Republicans are now exploring a run for the United States Senate seat being vacated by Judge Gregg. Kelly Ayotte has, of course, been running her exploratory committee for some time. Also, Ovid LaMontagne, and this week, Sean Mahoney, the publisher of a local magazine in Manchester, is exploring, is that the best way to say it, Andy?
Exploratory committee.
Exploratory committee. Also, Rasmussen came out with a poll this past week saying that Kelly Ayotte, if the election were held today, I guess, would beat Paul Hodes. Let's talk first about the 3 Republicans. Who has the best chance to win that seat at this point? It's early.
It's really hard to handicap these things right now because, frankly, the only people that are engaged in the election are the political people that are really political junkies and actively working on campaigns, and the press. The rest of the public doesn't even really understand that there's a Senate race out there yet. So I think it's a little early to try to handicap it. But if you look at the resources that each of the candidates bring, Kelly Ayotte has high name recognition, high favorabilities, but she's an attorney general. Her job is to arrest people and put them in jail, and that's attorney generals typically have make strong candidates because of that background. Her weakness is that she doesn't have any experience running for elected office, and being an official of government is very different than running for office. The dynamics are completely different. It requires a different set of skills. The second person, Ovid LaMontagne's run for office before, wasn't successful. Known in Manchester perhaps, but not really well known outside of the state. Sean Mahoney suffers from the same sort of issue of not being well known, but Sean has a big advantage that Ovid doesn't necessarily have, and that is he's a bigger checkbook, I think. So he has some resources bringing there, and he also has connections in Washington because he's been a representative for the Republican National Committee. So they all have different skills. None of them have proven themselves as candidates, and that's the kind of thing that we're really going to have to watch over the next 6 to 9 months. My sense is the public's going to start paying attention to this next June, July, August, maybe.
Next Labor Day?
Next Labor Day. And then we can really have a sense of who's got the best chance.
Grant, you've recently been through an election. You know the process.
Sure.
What's it now? Money raising? Is that who can raise the most money is the one who's going to succeed?
That'll certainly help. And Ayotte's third quarter filings, which will come out in October, that'll show whether she's enough ahead to bother getting into this race. She's had some stumbling blocks coming out of the gates as a new candidate who hasn't done this before. Ultimately, whoever wins that primary will be the best candidate to take on Paul Hodes, who I'm assuming will have the nomination. He doesn't look like he's going to have any sort of serious primary next year on the Democratic side. So you have to prove yourself to be able to win an election in order to show you can beat Paul Hodes. So I like primaries. But we don't know that all 3 candidates are going to be in the race or on the ballot. It's a long time before the filing period in June, and you're going to see a lot of jockeying among the activist base, among the fundraisers, and on the campaign trail to convince all 3 of these potential candidates, and maybe somebody else, whether or not they should throw their hat in the ring. But wide open Senate races don't come along all that often, and when it does, you better take your shot.
Kathy, can all 3 of them survive up until the primary?
They could. I think they do sort of address different constituencies to some extent within the Republican Party.
But they're all fairly conservative.
And that's interesting because Ovid is, everyone knows, extremely conservative, social conservative, fiscal, the whole package. Sean Mahoney, not as much is known about him, but he's painting himself as a conservative, businessman. He's like the businessman candidate.
Well, Mahoney's run a couple of times before. His positions are out there.
But unsuccessfully. And then we've got Kelly Ayotte, who, I got to tell you, I am surprised at how, she's not a good candidate right now. And you would think that someone who had been an attorney general...
Not good in what regard?
Been in front of the press. Well, has not been decisive. If you look at some of the situations where she's been in front of only friendly crowds, because Kelly's only been appearing on the Republican picnic circuit right now, where Republicans will say to her, who would be your inspiration, or who would you look to for leadership in Washington if you go to Washington? She has a hard time answering questions like that. Someone asked her, would you support that crazy, well, they didn't call it crazy, somebody who supported it said, what do you think of the nullification resolution that basically, was something that was totally discredited in 1828? Kelly said,
Civil War kind of took care of that.
Right, exactly. And Kelly said, instead of saying what you would expect an Attorney General to say, I support the Constitution, I support the system we have now, I support the United States, because nullification doesn't believe in the United States. Instead, she said, well, I'd have to look at that resolution. I believe in states' rights. That was such a fringe position for her to take. And when I heard that, I said, this is not a good candidate. This is someone who's saying and doing things that she thinks may help her now with a very right-wing conservative base in a Republican primary that may cost her the election if she is the nominee. I think that's why you're seeing Sean Mahoney suddenly coming back and saying, I'm taking a serious look at this. People were talking about him a couple of months ago. Then he sort of disappeared. Kelly does her thing. She's out on the circuit, stumbles several times, and now Sean Mahoney's being very serious about looking at it, which I think tells you she's got problems. Plus, there's a real resentment among the Republican grassroots about the fact that the Republicans in Washington have basically said Kelly Ayotte is a candidate, and that's not good for her.
You bring out a good point. I think that one of the problems that any candidate has is they have to know why they're running, and they have to have a coherent, consistent political philosophy. So when they get the questions from left field, they know how to answer it. It's not something that they have to really think about because they have a feel for what the implications are of it. And a lot of that is based on certainly reading and exposure and paying attention to politics, but a lot of it's just practice. And if you're a new candidate and you're running in a race for the first time, you haven't gone through that process of figuring out where you stand on things or really understanding the implications of your own political philosophy. It's tough to get.
It's the same learning curve that you always have as a candidate. If you look at anybody a month into their or 2 months into their first run for a major office, it's not pretty, and she's going to get better. But now we have flip cams and YouTube. So your first month on the campaign trail is now memorialized for everybody to see. And you're going to see improvement from all the candidates. Ovid's been through this in a statewide race, and Sean's been through it in a congressional race and a council race. And Kelly Ayotte, it's very different talking to Lincoln Day dinner than it is addressing a jury in a capital murder trial.
But you know what's, I'm going to disagree with you here, because if you're a trial attorney, which I'm not in real estate work, but if you're a trial attorney, you're supposed to be good on your feet. That is sort of your talent, is that you should be good on your feet. And you should, and she's been around the state a long time as the Attorney General, so there's a lot of issues that she should know about and be well versed in. She knows the politics of the state.
I don't think that nullification issues have come up too
much.
That's a basic constitutional law that if you disagree with a piece of federal legislation, you take it to the Supreme Court. You don't secede from the United States. But okay, Kelly, if that's what you want to do. But that's my point, though, is that that's a major stumble, and she should be better than that. And that's why the Republicans in Washington supported her, because on paper they thought, hey, perfect candidate. And this is so typical that a candidate who looks perfect on paper is not necessarily the best candidate. I think that's what we're seeing with Kelly right now.
All right, we have to take a break. More Politics in Progress coming to you from the Ashworth by the Sea in Hampton. We'll be right back.
Welcome home, man.